I think it's under more.
Okay. It's recording. Um, well, today we were thinking we would do a little bit of preparation for the next full study committee meeting, where I think a big part of, not the only part of that meeting is going to be sort of report outs and conversation based around the work that each work group has done. So we wanted to, yeah, prepare for that and decide, what we want to bring to the big group, to discuss, or yeah, things that we've decided, things that we suggest, big questions we still have that we think might relate to the other groups, that impact chapter one. That would probably be a good thing to bring. Or, areas that we think need a lot more work. It could be, we could we could format our presentation to the big group however we want. Chris and I have put together some of these big questions that have been brought up and we've been talking about into a document, and so we can look at that. And I think if there's sort of like a vision forming of, you know a how to form this utility, we could flesh that out a little bit in the document and go with that. But I think we could also, if we're thinking like we don't have such a, strong vision, or there's big holes or questions in any vision we have, we could kind of, work out several different options as like it could work like this, it could work like this, depending on this big unanswered question that relates to another chapter, like the fees, that brings up these questions. So I think we don't need to obviously make any real, like, it's the committee as a whole that will make any decisions. So I think we should just focus on identifying the most important questions that relate to our chapter, and some options, like from what we've considered, what are, maybe one or to three options, say, that of how this could work and how it could interplay with the other chapters. So that was what I was imagining. I think I'd spoken to Gianna earlier this week, and she was just, saying that our final report might not be like, here's exactly how everything's gonna would work. It's like our final report could be talking to the legislature about what still needs to be further considered. So I think we can keep that in mind when we're um, bringing these topics to the big group, is like, what do we need to really get more information about, say. So with that, I'll pull up this big picture questions document so we can look at it, and it's kind of broken into some sections based on conversations we've had. So the first being like, what are we solving for? Like, what is the scope of the utility? Like, what do we want the utility to include? It could take on kind of, these are some different things we've talked about, kind of the utilities sort of solving for. Um, we also have this big question of like, what's the scale? Is this going to be by watershed or county? Um, and then how to spread the costs and buy-in across that area, and which is sort of related to that next point, which is like, what is the mandatory buy-in level at different levels? And then billing, which sort of, I think we also have these big questions, which I think relate to other chapters, like the fee structure that's, really related to really being taken up by chapter 3 as well. And then how to interplay with the regulatory sites, which I think is also being considered by chapter 2. So thinking of these questions, like, does this sort of encompass what people have talked about so far, or do you think there's anything missing?
I know one thing that's missing is on what is the scale of a region. We put watershed and county, and we should include municipal as a potential landing spot for some or part or all of as an option. For me, chapter one is, well, not for me, I mean, for all of us, chapter one is about the structure. It's obviously the introductory chapter of the report, but it's also about the structure and scale of a potential stormwater utility. And as I've thought about this dynamic, like the question right there, the two questions at the top, what's the scale, regional, watershed, county, municipal, and what are we solving for? Really are like at the heart of how we write this chapter. Like I don't know how to go further until we answer those questions personally. If for me, I think 3 acre orphan sites and the technical managerial financial capacity are at the heart of why you'd want a regional entity. But I don't know. The other things seem optional. You could do all 3 acre sites at a regional level to solve for the equity issue, to get everybody paying in and sharing the cost, but that's a discussion. If that's in or that's out, then that affects, again, should it be watershed? Should it be county? Should it be municipal? Like these questions just seem to be foundational to the size and scope of a utility, which is at the heart of chapter one. So, and there's some other questions there too. So I don't know if this rings a bell with any of you, if this resonates. But I think there are policy questions we need to bring to the group before we can write the rest of the chapter. I mean, we could talk about these options and say, oh, there's these options, and then that's as far as we get. But if we had more decisions, then we could dive a little bit deeper into the details of the logistics.
I think you hit on one of the challenges that we have in working in these siloed groups of focusing on just the one question that we have before us, because so many of the which option works depends very much on the decisions that are being discussed in all the other groups. I would say that the what are we solving for question, what's missing from there is whether creation of another special purpose regional government is the solution, or whether this is part of a broader regional governance question. Like, do we need to set up the structure for another special purpose regional governance? And that's to me a fundamental question that I have in the back of my head when we have all of these conversations. And it's not just regional governance, it's a special purpose regional government. It's like we have lots of them. And every time there's a regional question or there's a service delivery question, there's a discussion of setting up a new special purpose regional governments, like a special dispatch or a special this or a special that. And so that's a question I have that I think is missing. And thank you for adding that. And then I think that equitable costs is definitely a question, especially when you consider who's reaping the benefits of the development that's being fixed. So if you look at the, so it's not just who, is it equitable for spreading the cost, but how are the benefits spread? Are the benefits spread equitably as well? So if you correct a 3 acre site in, the city of St. Albans using regional funds, city of St. Albans gets the grand list value for that. And so how do you equitably manage both the costs and the benefits?
Sorry, I'm just trying to capture what you said. How to equitably spread, manage the benefits of adoption.
Of any regional system that's created, there's both benefits and costs. And so you want to make sure that both the costs and the benefits have an equitable outcome.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. I mean, I don't think you can spread the benefits around that easily, but it does really inform, or it helps to. It's a really important thing when we're talking about spreading the costs around, right? Like, should someone in Fairfax be paying for the stormwater system in St. Albans City? It's relevant to that discussion for sure. Maybe we can solve for the benefits question as well, but yeah, it's a great point. I know if Senator Harrison were here, she would definitely be making a point about the municipal level for a scale of a region. She wants to see overlapping regions, or she sees the benefit of an overlapping region. I think the main concern that she has is aging infrastructure at the municipal level and not being able to tap into certain properties for stormwater fees. So, government or nonprofit properties that don't pay property tax. And I think that's the main benefit that she's seeing for a regional level. And so I'm not sure how, that makes sense to me. And I see there's value there, but then there are competing pressures, or not pressures, but they're competing factors that I think would really point towards a regional entity for, economies of scale for some of this work, in how you parse out some of the municipal general public works expenses from the stormwater and what goes at what level. I mean, I'm way out over my skis on this, but that seems like a really complicated question, which is what I'm getting at when I wrote what is mandatory at a region level, what's optional. Like, if we're just solving for 3-acre orphan sites, okay, maybe that's mandatory and we all pay in regionally to support those entities. But then how do we deal, and then maybe it's optional if you want to. Maybe there's a vac truck that's owned by a regional entity and you can contract with that, but it's not required. And maybe it would be cheaper to do it at a regional level, but let the economics drive what happens at, a shared regional level versus a local level. Anyway, lots of ways to go approach this, but I'm just thinking about that as a question and it needs to be answered. And it's complicated. And there might be different solutions at different parts of the state. What's done in Franklin County might be different than what's done in Rutland County or whatever.
Yeah, I think that really argues for not having one uniform type of utility. There's like Brattleboro sticks out in our county because we're heavily urbanized, and there are only a couple other cities that are similar. The surrounding rural communities, they have different needs, and I don't think they'd be open to subsidizing Brattleboro's 3-acre sites because most of them don't have any. They have no need for vacuum trucks because they're not really have much in the way of catch basins. So again, I think we can kind of look towards the waste management districts, which are anything from really large areas to single towns to 2 or 3 towns grouped together. So, the exact form of the utility should be dictated by municipalities that have common interests.
How do solid waste districts bill? Is it like a tipping fee when you drop off your trash? Is that what it is? Or like, do they bill in other ways?
Definitely tipping fees, but I think there might be some per
There's a
capita.
per capita, most districts have a per capita fee for the towns that are members.
Okay,
Per
and then
capita or percent of grand list or some combination.
so does it come through property taxes that then flows
Yeah,
through the
local
town to
property
the?
taxpayers
Okay.
pay it. Mhm. But it's not billed, it's not like a line item on your property tax
Yeah.
bill. It's built into the municipal budgets.
Yep.
Had
And I think
thought
like,
of just
oh, go ahead.
just back to like what are we solving for? Could just be just I think of this more from a watershed scale just because it's more familiar for me, but trying to find the efficiencies in phosphorus removal within watershed boundaries, and giving an entity that, and this is just kind of potential, and it was looking at that color coded bubble diagram of what scale, but potentially giving a entity the ability to find most efficient P reductions to meet its sector's reduction goals in the most efficient way.
This gets to what Neil was saying about point source or waste load allocation versus load allocation, and we need to keep them separate. And yeah, other people are like, well, I get that because that's the way the TMDL is built, but the waste load is so expensive. Can we find a way to do some trading, or whatever? I mean, maybe we're just trading within the developed land sector and finding something
Right.
that's cheaper somewhere else. Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
It seems like the points that everyone is making also just really highlights the fact that what are we solving for and what is the scale are completely interrelated. You can't, you don't want a regional scale solution if you're, I mean, in my mind, you don't want a regional scale solution if you're only solving for something like the 3-acre orphan sites, because the amount of managerial governance and other structures that you would need to put in place wouldn't match the scale of what you're solving for. So I think that those two are going to be completely interrelated when we further move down this discussion. And which also supports the idea of being flexible in terms of what this means.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably good to have this kind of a lot of questions on this list because in some ways it kind of feels like putting the cart before the horse with, the whole group hasn't come to the decision of, okay, what's the entity going to look like? What is it going to encompass? And yeah, so we can't get to answers at this chapter level without that big picture yet. So I agree. It's good to have flexibility here.
Okay, so it sounds like for coming to the full group, we'll want to say we have these sort of fundamental foundational questions that we don't have answers to, and that we think that we need, direction from the whole committee that will inform the path that we take as chapter 1. And we could, present some of these questions or all these questions. I don't know if people have preferences, like I think, because we could, as chapter 1, say this is what we think we would prefer what we're solving. We can pose an answer to this question. What are we solving for? Is that something you all are interested in doing, or keeping it more open-ended?
So I think, having a certain level of open-endedness, like these are questions that still need to be answered before a model and exact structure can be determined, and those are questions for the whole committee. But I think it'd be important and helpful to bring up the, like what we talked about last meeting, what you brought up, Chris, the options of, I keep thinking of it as like an a la carte menu for municipalities to sign up for what services. If anything, I think it's just a good idea just to bring it up and have other people thinking about it, because I thought it was intriguing. Not saying it's the perfect answer, but unless we have, if we have other model ideas, I think we could bring those up too. But I think we can say, I don't know what order, but I think it'd be important to bring up that idea just to be thought about.
I feel like that kind of fits in with this question down here, which is like, what is mandatory? So we could say, one idea we had was, like you said, a la carte, like, a lot of freedom in what each municipality decides they want to, how the level they want to participate. Or, I don't know, keeping options open.
Yeah. Chris, did you have a good title to your idea?
I like the a la carte. That sounds awesome. The a la carte model. There's a implementation challenge with that. Like there needs to be a certain level of structure. Like it can't be totally a la carte, because then like there needs to be some set of amount of money for startup and investment and staff and capacity. So, and maybe we're working with an existing entity, like what you're talking about, Catherine. Maybe we're not doing another special entity, but when we were working with a QuISP or an RPC, right? So there's some capacity, but even then, you need, like, staff are already doing things, so you still need money for staff and time to do this. And so there needs to be some level of investment, and so it can't be totally a la carte.
Right.
Or if it is, then it's a little squirrely, because you may do all this investment and there's not a lot of work being funneled up, or it's a little from an implementation point of view, it's a little off. But
I have the same thought, but I kind of paired it with, there would have to be some kind of base level pay in and funding and services, and then it's additional ones on top of that. But
I think from
go ahead.
I think one thing that would be important is accountability. So I think on a regional level, you'd want to have inspections and compliance and reporting. So all the sub-municipalities are, pulling their weight.
So you're saying like, if a town, through reporting and inspections is not meeting, standards, whether that's MRGP or MS4 or 3 acre, whatever it is, that they would be sort of like compelled to participate at a higher, compelled to get more service from the utility. Is that what you sort of mean?
That portion of it should be done regional, just so the municipal.
So I think of that, when I hear that, Brian, as under the technical, managerial, financial capacity heading. And we could add a bullet underneath that to say, inspections and reporting, and other administrative functions of compliance. That makes sense. To be I mean, they could go in a bunch of these. It could go under what's mandatory. Having that mandatory at a regional level makes sense. It's a decision. I think that kind of makes sense. And also, theoretically, it's a, it's a it's a point I want to make here about what's in and what's out. There's the what are we doing, what's in and what's out, and then there's the billing, what's in and what's out. Like what the entity is doing from a day-to-day managerial, like what are they responsible for is one level of stormwater utility, but also like where the money is coming from is another level. It's like two sides of the balance sheet for me theoretically. Like when I think about 3 acre orphan sites, like maybe the stormwater utility is responsible for that day to day. Like that's in their wheelhouse, but like how that's paid for is on the other side of like maybe those costs get spread around the region, but or maybe not. Maybe the money comes from the state. Who knows? But it's I have a dividing line in my mind on any of these questions between the money versus what you're actually doing.
I keep falling back on the idea that this should be anything we do should be enabling rather than necessarily mandatory. So I'm not sure that I'm on board with saying that we agree that reporting and inspections are a mandatory part of a regional system because I don't think we've
Okay.
defined what a regional system is. And so I can't say that that makes sense until it's all so interrelated. And I think about the MS4 system that's in place now, where we already just organically have municipalities banding together to do the outreach and education portions of it. And that's happening both in Chittenden County and Franklin County. And so that's happening organically, even without a mandate, without anything specific in statute, which makes me think that we always should have on the list status quo.
Mhm.
And no changes necessary. Like that should be always on our list, even if it's rejected in the end, it should be clear that we've thought about that.
It's a good point. Thanks, Catherine. I definitely don't want to put words in your mouth, so or make decision like I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. So it's good. And that makes sense to me for sure.
So maybe I should change this to like, I don't, what would help capture your thoughts, Catherine?
I think just say maybe part of the mandatory.
Yeah, one of the things that I put at the bottom that I asked Zach about is the billing question. The logistics of billing seem complicated as well. Not everybody has a water bill or a sewer bill, and not everybody has a property tax bill, right? There are nonprofits and government entities that don't. I mean, you have the parcel information in the town records, but they don't all get bills. And then we also heard in the last stormwater large group meeting from SEMSWA in Colorado that they do not put their stormwater fees on their property tax bills because it can be challenging there's a collection problem. People might opt not to pay it, or I don't know if they were doing a line item, or I don't know the exact level of whether they tried this and it didn't work, but they were advising against putting a stormwater utility fee on a property tax bill specifically because what they really want is compliance for people to pay. Going after $6 here or $10 there is prohibitively difficult if people opt not to pay it. So that's a whatever we come up with a model, like there's still some logistics there that are really challenging on how this is dealt with. That's more on the fee structure side, right? And which I think is the subject of chapter 2, but it can really influence the structure of what we're paying for if we don't get that question answered right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Go ahead.
I think the billing question is important because, you know, there may be some scale or solve, you know, what are we solving for answer that we have, but the billing is just not really possible. I mean, that's what Zach has brought up several times, I think, is like they in Montpelier tried to set up some sort of system, and they just found that the billing was not workable. So I think there's some element of like, I don't know, just like realistically what is possible with the billing, and if our solution involves like saying Montpelier, you have to handle the billing, then we kind of already know that they weren't able to do that. So I think it would be good to ask to start a conversation around that with chapter 3 or whoever's doing the fee structure and billing is like, you know, what is realistic.
They may already be talking about this. For what it's worth, our Gianna, our like core team, Gianna, myself, and Terry from the Stormwater program are going to get together this afternoon and compare notes across the various chapters. And we have not yet been able to do that. So I actually don't know everything they've talked about in the other chapters. But that's okay. That's exactly where we're at. Is sort of starting to build awareness across the different groups.
Okay, it seems like we have a lot of questions here. Is there any other points about this equitable spread of costs and benefits? That's something we haven't really added to today.
It seems to
Well-
me like that's a question that is just something that we have in mind as we're thinking about all these different possible permeations of a solution. And it would be like a double check as you're thinking it, you know, as the solutions are narrowed down to the, you know, maybe there's a list of a few top options. That'll be the check, like, is this equitable from a cost and benefit perspective?
Yeah, that question is one we've been considering a lot in Shelburne. The utility is, especially with our 3-acre sites, bringing those to compliance, because a lot of them were also our FRP and PCP sites. And yeah, I mean, the like models we've considered are, one is from just the utility, just the stormwater utility that collects fees from every property in Shelburne based on their impervious coverage. The utility just paying that, more with the thinking behind that is more of the real benefits of like why this work needs to be done in the first place is to clean up the lake. The lake is a resource for all residents and cleans up also the watersheds leading to the lake. But there's like the technical side of like, okay, yeah, you have permit compliance, so that's a value you can try to quantify, but no neighborhood is really jazzed like, oh, I get to pay to have my undersized dry pond is now a gravel wetland, and that makes my neighborhood and my property value so much more. So there's, from the whole utility side, we considered, there's also like we considered a shared model where we considered like all the 3-acre sites, and because each site gets varying amounts of grant funding. So is it, really equitable that one site happens to get full grant funding and then another just happens to get 30% grant funding? So one neighborhood is paying back 200,000 while one is not paying back anything. Is that fair? So we looked at, could we set up a special assessment district to all 3-acre sites in Shelburne to kind of even out the grant funding and costs to all those sites. We ran into some legal concerns with that, because if one site does get full grant funding or necessarily one 3-acre site didn't need any work. This is a better example. One 3-acre site, doesn't need any work done. It's actually meeting compliance, but another site needs a $400,000 pond. Those people in neighborhood A that didn't actually need any work done, paying for neighborhood B, our attorneys thought that would open us up for lawsuits. Then the other consideration was just individual sites, and how it's structured in our ordinance is that the town would pay for the percentage that the town road is, and then the private properties would pay for their share. And then the other model, which we didn't consider in Shelburne, but other towns, like such as Williston, follow this model that the utility says, nope, that's your problem, and solely leaves it up to the permit holders and the development to pay for their upgrades. And we haven't landed on a decision either. So
That is really interesting rundown that you just did, and it really highlights the inherent problem of trying to use collective funding to pay for regulatory compliance.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a huge challenge. Yeah, that was really helpful to hear what you've gone through.
And then the thing that I'm thinking about, Shane, in addition to what you just presented, I don't know how many 3-acre sites there are in Shelburne, 8 or 10. Let's just say there's 10. Then
pretty close.
let's say,
Yeah.
let's say you settle on the model where the stormwater utility adopts all the sites and pays for all of it, and the costs are spread around the town to be the most equitable and cost share-ish approach. Then let's say you have Charlotte next door, and let's just say by luck, and I'm just making stuff up to make the point, let's say they just have one 3-acre site, and then they do the same thing, but the scale of the region, so we all do this at a municipal level, but by luck, Charlotte only had one site, so the costs that are spread around are so low for the whole town. Just because Shelburne has so many more sites, you're solving equity at a certain level, but neighbors right across the Shelburne-Charlotte line have vastly different stormwater utility payments.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the scale of how we solve this and who's in and who's out can be really, we're trying, like, there's a lot to think about when we're thinking about the size and who's paying and what is being paid for. It's complicated.
Oh yeah, it's very complicated, and even with the total shared across the utility outlook, has a number of concerns. One, I should have prefaced that these are just looking at the residential sites that are co-permittees that have town-owned roads. There's private sites that have private roads that the town would not get involved in. And so there's the equity issue of like, okay, those private sites would then be paying for their own compliance and paying for those
Yeah.
private public sites, that we do have a a credit manual in place. So if sites are treating their own runoff, they can get a substantial fee reduction. But I think the bigger concern from our select board, or some of our select board especially, was what kind of precedent that would set, that now any site that needs to retrofit or upgrade or whatever to their stormwater system, that the town utility is just going to step in and retrofit it and take on that full cost. So yeah, there's a myriad of concerns with every option.
And I feel like a broken record, but I feel like this makes me want to say again that when you start to pull apart the complications and the number of entities that have to work through all these complications, it makes me again want to balance it with the complication of reopening the TMDL and questioning whether the 3-acre permit should be part of it. And it's a matter of who is managing the complications versus whether it's complicated. So I'm just going to throw that out there one more time. And I'm going to probably say that almost every meeting, because I do think that that's a question that hasn't been, when you try to pull this apart and just what we have one chapter and just the complications that you've raised in Shelburne for trying to address this. And that's not even thinking about the regional or statewide scale. It just makes me think that we need to keep asking that question.
I would agree. I know other colleagues that feel like a lot of times the dealing with the difficulties of these mandates is kind of trickled down to the people who really manage and implement it. So yeah, I would full-heartedly agree.
And then Neil would jump in and say, but then we would stand to lose because New York's allocation is lower than it would probably be, the balance between Vermont and New York would change, and that would not be to Vermont's benefit if we were open to TMDL. But I'm with you on the 3-acre being a problem. I'm with you on that.
There's a way to somehow do trading among the sectors, and we could manage the balance of phosphorus reduction without dealing with the high cost and the complications of these 3-acre sites. I'd almost rather spend an hour every other week talking about that and how we solve for that than trying to create this new structure to deal with this one narrow issue. But
Yeah. And if you're working on like a watershed scale, like you can look at, because different watersheds have different, I think it's like the Chittenden County or direct drainage, what is it, 3-acre sites are 34% of the developed lands reduction. So, certain basins, 3-acre sites are gonna matter, or unless you're able to find some real huge reductions in other sectors. But other watersheds, yeah, I should have probably other focuses. So that's tying back to like, what are we solving for? Is like, I would totally agree, Catherine, that if watersheds or whatever the scale is could look at, some cross trading to meet the phosphorus reductions. Because I mean,
and that's on there, right? Finding efficiencies in phosphorus reduction by sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just keep bringing it up.
Maybe that should be a big bold highlights.
I can do whatever you guys want. So is that accurate, the bisector, or is it also about this point about the trading and
Yeah, maybe it's across sectors or between sectors.
Yeah, across and between. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have about 10 more minutes. I wonder if we should talk about how we want to approach the meeting on the next study committee meeting. This, I don't know what's expected if Chris and I are going to be sort of presenting this, or if the group would like to do that. If people want to raise certain, we could take these sections that we have and say here are questions, or if we want to, yeah, I don't know, like narrow, there's a lot of questions. So I'm not sure if there's something that, we should really distill as like, this is what we need the committee to know right now, or decide or talk about as a committee right now.
I mean, Mary, we can present, you and I can present, we have a chapter 1 outline that we started on that we were using in our last meeting 2 weeks ago. We could even, that includes the high level organizational options that Sage did some research on for us. We could go through that in 2 minutes just to say, hey, this is what we have for chapter 1, but we're at a point here where we have a whole bunch of questions, and then we could transition to this document and present it, maybe clean it up a little bit, based, with the notes that you have here. And then we'll see, we can talk to Gianna and Neil and Terry about what they're thinking. Like, I don't know how much time we're going to have, but it'd be great to hear from people in this group specifically. Like, I'd love to get folks, listening to what Shane and Catherine are saying. Um, so I don't know if there's space for that, but yeah, we can do the original, like, or the intro 5 minutes on this document. But if that's okay with the group, like, would you be fine presenting this to the larger work group? I saw some nods.
Yeah, I think that works, especially since you're having a staff meeting later to talk
Yeah.
about how you're going to make all of this work fit into
Yeah.
one meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good to talk about internally. I don't know at all about what's happening with other folks.
Yeah, I guess we need to see the agenda and see like how much time we even have. That will, impact a lot of what we can cover and how, much detail we can go into. But I think it is important to hear from the members of the committee on like, I don't want Chris and I to just, I don't think we should just talk the whole time. Like, if we want to do some sort of broad setup or something, but I think the other committee members would value hearing from people that are on the committee.
I don't think I could recreate what Shane just said nearly as well as Shane did. So,
I certainly
and-
cannot.
yeah, I mean, I understood what you're saying, but I need to take more notes to be able to do that. But that's fine. Like, Shane is the expert because he's the stormwater.
Maybe we can you can just edit the recording down and you can just play it for everybody. So
Yeah,
Shane
yeah.
doesn't even need to remember what he said.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, we can kick it off and get the conversation started and orient people to what we've been talking about, and then the folks in the group here can jump in to add their comments if that's appropriate. Okay, great. Well, I think we're at a point, like, I don't know exactly, it's like a chicken and the egg dynamic. Like, we have another meeting with this group in 2 weeks, right? And so I kind of feel like we're ready to bring these questions to the larger group, but I feel like we may need a little bit more feedback from them before we're able to make more progress in this particular subgroup, this work group. So I'm just looking ahead to our next meeting I think in 2 weeks, on the 13th, which is the day after the Stormwater Utility Committee, Study Committee, which is on the Thursday before. So maybe we'll have something to talk about out of that meeting. We can just, I guess I just say, let's keep the agenda for 2 weeks from now a little fluid, and then maybe it'll be a shorter meeting if there's, if we're just sort of spinning our wheels in the larger study group. Anyway, appreciate some adaptive management for the next time we get together. Any other thoughts or questions or input? Brian, any input on where we're at?
No, that all sounds right to me.
Okay, great. Thanks. Shane, I know you're not an official member, but in my mind, you are. Like, I'm really thankful that you're here, contributing and making time for this. It's pretty invaluable. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad I could. I think it's very interesting. So,
Yeah.
and I guess my livelihood now depends on stormwater, so it's good for me to be aware of it too. So,
Well, I think one way or another, there's going to be work. It's just,
Oh,
we'll just see where and what form and doing what, right?
yeah.
We still have a TMDL. How we solve it is TBD, I guess. And then also, obviously, thank you to Brian and Catherine and Mary and Sage, and to the folks who couldn't be here as well, Senator Harrison and others, and Zach. Mary, any last thoughts as our facilitator?
I guess we want to make sure Zach and yeah, I guess he's the only one that's missing. So make sure he's aware of what our plan is. So maybe Chris, you and I can, I don't know, write up like maybe after we meet or see the agenda or meet with Gianna, we could say, okay, this is how much time we have. We'll do a quick, however that long that ends up being, presentation on what we've talked about and some of the um ideas we've had. And then here are some areas where we have these big questions. We'll pass it to, I don't know, maybe we could like write out like, here are the areas where, these are the areas of questions we'll be bringing up, and people could volunteer to, discuss various questions. I don't know. Maybe I'm like over preparing us and everyone's like, this is fine. I could just talk to so if that's the case, that's fine. I just don't want anyone to feel unprepared.
I think what we can do is clean up this outline we've worked on today and use that as the foundation for our presentation. Use that and just walk through it. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's maybe some value also in presenting the chapter 1 outline. But this is the meat that I want to get to, is what are the open questions, because this is what we need to advance is with the larger group. Let me talk to Gianna and Terry, and we can talk about next steps. We should clean this up and send it to the group, I think, is our next
And
step.
I think whatever you come up with when you have that meeting later with the rest of the team, to fit, because there's a lot that needs to fit into that big group meeting. So whatever you come up with, that's going to work is fine. I think we found that none of us have problems speaking up if we think that there's another point that needs to be made.
Good.
Appreciate that. And I'm happy to have you speak up too. Like, yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah, really appreciate that.
Great.
Okay,
Well,
then yeah, you'll hear from us and we'll see you at the committee meeting, and have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
See ya.
You too. Bye-bye.